Chairman Naresh Ji Botra, Srimati Botra, Dr. Pillai, distinguished speakers, students, staff, citizens of Jodhpur. It's a great pleasure for me to be here at this school, a relatively new school, tied to the Cambridge board, making it an international school, and to be here for this first ever TEDx event in these parts. I compliment the principal and the chairman and your whole team for making this possible for Jodhpur. And I wish the deliberations great success. Jodhpur is fast becoming an educational hub. And we see it not only here with this new school along this road. There are 2-3 schools that have come up recently. But at the same time, we have one of the oldest engineering colleges, medical college. Our residential university is one of the largest universities. And in recent times, we've got AIMS, the IIT, and Ayurvedic University, Law College, National Institute of Fashion Technology, and then connected with the desert, we have Kazri, AFRI, and DMRC, Desert Medical Research College. That shows that already we are a center for not only education, but we also look towards the desert and how we can survive in this desert. You have chosen some wonderful topics, and of course, youth perspectives and revolutionary ideas on education is a very topical and forward-thinking topic. Honesty and practical wisdom, fitness and cached cyber citizenship, all very topical subjects. But I will concentrate mainly just now on the desert because that's my home. I've grown up here, I've grown up in it, and I've seen it go through various changes in life, and changes are still going on. We live in an age when the degradation and destruction of natural habitat is taking place in an unprecedented level all around us. The pace and scale of it is frightening. It's happening everywhere, not only just here in the desert, but on land, in the sea, in the mountains, and even in space. We are sending rockets and satellites, and then they are just abandoned. We have polluted our waters, our atmosphere. You just have to go to Delhi to see the level of air pollution. Fortunately, we are in a better condition here, better position here, and people who come from outside, one thing they say, well, we've come somewhere where we can breathe. We can actually breathe, we can actually see the stars, we can see the sky, and they feel liberated. So that is what we have to do. We have to be pioneers, all of you students, and to see how we can protect our environment. I'm not somebody who is against development, and I'm not someone who is a pure conservationist in that sense that we go back to nature. Change has to come. Change is inevitable. It's here with us. But we have to control that change. We have to understand how we can make technology work for us. The degradation is not just a fact of natural change. Natural change takes place in the desert and has over the years. At one time, we were under the sea, and there's evidences of that in Jaisalmer. In later years, there's also evidence that there were forests here. and forest fossils. So over time, these of course are hundreds of years, millions of years ago, but even that is nothing in the evolution of the universe. It's just a dot. And so we are also at a crucial time. But what is different now, what changes the situation is the human intervention. Earlier changes were a matter and a process of nature. But now we are accelerating those changes, and we, the human race, is responsible for that. I, in my own time, have seen so many changes. I've said, not far from here is a place called Sardar Samand. There's a lake there, and that is where we used to go for holidays. And I remember driving there and seeing herds of black buck, and actually had to stop the car to let the herd pass, because once they start crossing the road, they don't stop. And in the lake, I have seen crocodiles, I've seen otters, there were wild boar there, even leopards used to come and go, all kinds of things, animals. But now you barely see them, and we are very acutely protecting our black buck, which is now, as you know, in the news. Fortunately, I am happy to say that the black buck has come back to Sardar Samand, which is a great sign for us. And so, what else have we done? We live in a desert, and it is said that the Thar is the most heavily populated desert in the world. And that is because our ancestors were able to live in these inhospitable conditions. You wouldn't think so now. If you look at Jodhpur, you can see all the greenery around us. But that also has come at a price. We have taken, if you go back to the history of Jodhpur 500 years, the water harvesting was the essence of the life of the city. All the water all over the hills was harvested into lakes and went into small tanks into the city, and that went into the bowdies and then the wells. That system lasted right up to the 40s, when my grandfather realized that now we have to look outward, and the Javai Canal was built, and he inaugurated it. It was completed after he passed away, but that was even before that. Water came from Hemawas and Sardar Samand by canal, and even that we exhausted after some time. It was not sufficient, so then we had to go and get water from the Indira Canal, and that is what's saving Jodhpur. If that wasn't there, we would be possibly having to evacuate Jodhpur, or at least the population of Jodhpur would not have grown to that extent. But even that, as I say, we had to pay a price for. In between, we were supplying water to the city from the groundwater. We were taking the water from the villages. The village water was coming to Jodhpur, and those villages went dry. And now the irony is that we have water from the Punjab, and we are pumping it into the city, so the subsoil has come up. Subsoil water has come up to such a level that we are pumping that water out and throwing it back. So this, I think, is all about a question of management. We're not able to manage things, and that is creating lots of problems in the city, that water in the subsoil, because all the basements are flooded, and if God prohibit, but if anything happens like an earthquake or something, some of these houses are very prone for collapsing. So my point is that we, as a human race, have to learn to live with the environment. And our ancestors did that. Our desert folk, our villagers, what is known as traditional wisdom. We forgot traditional wisdom. It's there in all our sayings, in our songs, in our poetry, in our language, in the Rajasthani language. There are everything, songs and how you survive in the desert. Desert plants are used, herbal plants are used for medicine. All that grows, like this Kher, Kumja, Sangria, is now considered a luxury. But basically it is desert food, it is the villagers' food. And you can now, people ask for it in London and you can get it. So we have learned to survive, and at the same time, in recent years, we have done things that are absolutely not in keeping with conservation. Even the exploitation of minerals. We have several minerals in the state, and that is what's giving us good revenues. But the way it is being mined, it leaves a lot to be desired. The way marble is being mined in small mines, how much wastage there is. If you see how it's done mechanically in Italy, nothing is wasted, and larger chunks are given. But here, it's like a sort of cottage industry, and it's seen as a political largesse handing out these mine licenses. And of course, they get a kickback from the miners. As a result, you see the hills in Balsamand, which is a catchment area of a very precious water body, Balsamand, is totally ruined. We went to court on this, and it's been going on recently. The Green Tribunal sent a commission here to see that what was happening, because the court order prohibiting mining was being neglected, and the commission has just gone recently and will be giving their report. So a lot of it is avoidable, and we have also, now we're coming to green energy, green and clean. Even that has its question marks, whether we talk about windmills or solar energy. Windmills in Jaisalmer, because of their placement near villages and near historical monuments, are causing a huge problem. And also, the companies are insensitive to local environment. They're leaving debris all over the place. I work with INTAC. I'm the chairman of the state chapter of INTAC, and I get the feedback from our chapters, and they are very distraught. We also, through INTAC and Jal Bhagirathi Foundation, I come to learn of what is happening. We have had, in our traditional systems, we've had the wonderful way of preserving the catchment areas of small lakes, talabs and things in the form of orans. Oran is a sacred grove, and normally there is a temple there, and around the temple that area is sacred. Trees are not cut. You are not even allowed to go in that area to do your normal natural ablutions or anything like that. But these areas are not properly defined. They're not properly classified in the revenue records, and are being given away for development, for mining, and so on. Just recently, we had a case where a huge electrical a substation was being put up right in the middle of a catchment of 4 or 5 lakes. And the locals, I must say, hats off to them, through INTAC, went to court and got a stay order against that. And that's the first time that actually the villagers themselves have taken the lead. So there is an awareness coming up. Our village people are strong people, they're proud people, and they understand their environment, they understand what's good for them. We talk about water, which is the lifeline of the desert. Without that, we cannot survive. And so therefore, the use and conservation of water was a very essential factor in life of the villages. And so all the water that fell by rain was trapped in small talabs and preserved, and people used to look after those talabs. And every month they used to have some operation where the whole village would involve themselves, regardless of caste or how rich you are. You either gave shramdan, your own labor, or you paid for it if you were a rich man. But that village pond was maintained throughout, and in the summers was desilted. These systems went out of style once we started giving piped water to the villages. People lost interest, the villages became dirty, and they became cesspools, and the drainage started going into them. And but as a result, what happened? We have pumped so much water out of the groundwater, if we are continuing to do it, that areas which were classified by the Underground Water Board as grey zones have turned into dark zones. So most of Rajasthan is now turned into a dark zone. And the recharge is not happening. I was once in England and they declared a drought. And yes, the lawns were looking a bit brown, but I couldn't see any sort of evidence of drought as we understand it. So I asked somebody, what constitutes a drought? They said the moment we see the subsoil water going down below a certain level, which is not rechargeable, that is a drought. And we have passed that phase long ago. So we need to control the use of our precious assets, and that's what Jal Bhagirathi is doing. We are encouraging people to go back to their old way of thinking, but introducing modern methods, creating small, cheap dams or repairing them, desilting the lakes, and also improving the catchment by growing trees, grasses. Some of the grasses have become extinct in Rajasthan, the local grasses, which gave a lot of nutrition. The Sevan grass is almost supposed to be one of the most nutritious grasses, and there's one other one, I can't remember the name now. But these grasses are being reintroduced in these places, and the villages have control over them. We have other kinds of common lands, gauchas, apart from orans. All these common lands, which are the sort of lifeline of the villages and the desert, are being neglected. So it's important that we identify them, and we have a project under INTAC that is identifying all the orans of Bikaner and Jodhpur district particularly, and this we hope to have special legislation recognizing them and making them protected areas. So in this way we can look at our desert in a way that it can sustain itself without having completely ruined it. Now we come to the state of the rivers. The Luni River and the rivers around Pali are all polluted because of this dyeing and printing industry. Balotra used to have a wonderful mela. They still have it. It's the Chaitrika Mela in the name of Maninaji, further down the Luni. And there the chamatkar, the miracle was that in summer, it's usually sometime in May, you go and dig in the riverbed and you find water just 1 meter below. Now that water, the mela still happens, but that water is all polluted and is having to be actually diverted now to one side with a small sand dam, and government has to pump water in and bring in lakhs of tankers to keep the mela going. So these are all the kind of things that we have to concern ourselves with and understand from our ancestors, understand from the local people how they sustain themselves, what is important, and technology and development must go hand in glove with conservation. This is the essence of our living, and this is the essence of how we will survive in the desert. It's all very well we sit here in the city, but if we take all the energy and all the water for our comforts and leave the rest of the area dry and barren, who will feed the nation? So we have to have farmers, we have to have areas which produce crops, fruits, and fodder for the animals. Hence, a balanced form of development is what is necessary. That is my main point. Finally, I come to the desert park that we have created. I urge you, your children, to go and see if they haven't already, the Rajah Desert Park, and you'll get a guide there. Here we have an extremely committed person, Pradeep Kishan, who's written a book on the trees of Delhi, and he is replanting. We've taken out all the acacia, which is a foreign plant, and replanting only desert shrubs, desert trees, and desert grasses. And we're bringing them from other parts of the desert, so that in one place you will have see some of these things which are, as I said earlier, many of them are becoming extinct. So it will be like a sort of biological zoo, and you will have to come and people will come and research these wonderful plants. You don't see so much unless somebody explains them to you, but how they survive, when they bloom, how they breed, is all a very fascinating story. And that entire hill of Mehrangarh again has a great history. That is a volcanic rock. That's how we originated, and there are different layers of volcanic rock there. And I remember seeing a sign which nobody could explain to me. It used to be there all the time by the Geological Society, Geological Survey of India, and it said protected welded tufts. And nobody could explain that to me for many years. Now I understand what it's all about. That even our rocks are of historic and ancient value, and we have to protect them as a kind of repository of how the world has evolved. And so that is also something that you can get to see there. I've talked a lot because I'm very passionate about this subject, but I just hope that all of us here will become responsible citizens and look at our environment, particularly a fragile environment like the desert, and see what we are doing. At least start with yourself. What are you doing to pollute the desert, and what can you do to save it? I appeal to you all. Let's work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Babji. Those words of wisdom